countries that are quite similar to each other, but geographically are nowhere to be compared together. These countries are Australia and Canada. In this video today, we're going to be talking about their demographics, their geography, their economies, the quality of life, their education, their healthcare system, and lastly, and most importantly, the scope of becoming a citizen in each of these countries. At the end of this video, you should be able to decide which country pays you better in terms of relocating with your family. At the end of this video, you should be able to decide on where you will have a better quality of life. You should be able to decide which country favors you in terms of becoming a citizen, which is the overall goal of every immigrant. So please watch to the very end so that you don't miss out on any information. Now, let's talk about the demographics. And when it comes to demographics, let's talk about the population size of these countries. Now, Canada has the larger population size with about 37.6 million people as of today, making them the 39th most populous country in the world behind Poland and Morocco. In fact, as we speak, there are more people living in Greater Tokyo than they are in the whole of Canada. Guys, ponder on this. That a city in the world is more populous than the second biggest country in the world. That is one of the reasons why the Canadian government is always looking for people to come into Canada. On the other hand, Australia is the 55th most populous country in the world with a population size of about 25.46 million people as of today. Now let's talk about life expectancy at birth. Now, life expectancy at birth means that the total number of years that a population is expected to live, okay? Now, Canada takes the win on this one. Canada has a life expectancy at birth of 82.4 years as against Australia, which has the life expectancy of 82 years. Now, let's talk about climate. What is the weather like in these two countries? Now, Australia takes the win here. Okay, and when we're talking about their daytime temperature, their nighttime temperature, as well as the number of hours a day they get to see sun. For their daytime temperature, Australia has 24.4 degrees centigrade, okay, temperature, and then Canada has 7.4 degrees centigrade. Then for their nighttime temperature, Australia has 12.6 degrees centigrade, and Canada has minus 2.5 centigrade. So Canada is colder, right? Now, the sunshine hours per day. For Australia, they get about 7.9 hours of sunlight during the day. And for Canada, you might get as much as 5 hours per day. Might, guys. Now, let's talk about the median age of the population. Now, that's the average age of the population. Now, you know that a younger population is better because a younger population means a younger workforce. Whereas an aging population will hinder the economy of the country, okay, and also impact on their health system negatively. Australia wins on this one. It has an average age of 38.1 years as against Canada's 41.1 years. So Australia takes the win on this one. Now let's talk about their total land area. Being the second largest country in the world aside from Russia, Canada has a large mass that is huge. It has a land mass of 9.1 kilometers compared to Australia, which has a land mass of 7.7 kilometers, making them the 6th largest country in the world. Guys, if you're getting value from this video, if what I'm saying makes sense to you, please click on the like button. That is one way to support my channel. Thank you so much for doing so. I appreciate you. Now, moving on to the economy. Now, when it comes to economy, let's talk about their GDP, gross domestic product. Now, this can be calculated by adding up all the money spent by consumers, government, and businesses in the year. Australia has a gross domestic product of $1.3 billion. This places them on the 13th position across the world. Now, this is very impressive considering their size, the number of their population, which is about 25 million. However, on the other hand, Canada has a gross domestic product of $1.9 billion. Canada takes the 10th position across the world. Now, Canada's economy is growing at just over 3%, while Australia's economy is growing at 2%. Now that we know their gross domestic product, let's talk about their gross domestic product per capita. Now, gross domestic product per capita can be gotten by dividing their gross domestic product by the number of people in the country. That's the population size. Now, Australia takes the win on this one. It has a gross domestic product per capita of $52,000. The average wealth of an average Australian is about $3,000 more than that of a Canadian. However, I want you to have this at the back of your mind that even with this analogy, Australia is the 16th most expensive country to live across the world, while Canada takes the 24th position. Okay, so now you understand that living in Aussie comes with a price tag. Now, let's talk about education expenditure. For education expenditure, the both countries are at par, okay? This is the amount of money that the government of the country, allocates to education expenditures yearly. And for both countries, it is 5.3% of the gross domestic product. So they are doing the same. Now, let's talk about inflation rates. Now, inflation is higher in Canada with about 0.2% as compared to Australia. Canada has about 44 billionaires, okay, in the ratings of the world, while Australia has 31 billionaires in the rating of the world. Guys, let's talk about the quality of life. What is the quality of life like in both countries? Canada and Australia are two great countries with great education, good wages, and great living standards. However, these two countries are not so perfect. They still have poverty in certain regions in this country. Now, majority of the adults in both countries have a high obesity rate. It's no longer news. This is because of the kind of lifestyle they live, okay, their eating habits and all of that. While Australia has 29% of its adult population obese, Canada has 29.4% of its adult population obese. Let's talk about healthcare facilities, okay? Now, healthcare facilities is good in both countries. However, Australia has more physicians and hospital bed spaces per 1,000 people. Now, in Canada, healthcare is free, okay? It is covered by Medicare Health, okay? Insurance coverage is the basic requirement you need to access Medicare. Healthcare costs are also lower in Canada, and the Canadian healthcare system is more humane. Australia features a very robust system of healthcare. You'll be able to access healthcare in Australia when you become a permanent resident. Most people who are in Australia, they take out private health insurance to be able to cover costs for dental and specialist care. In other words, both countries have great healthcare systems. Now, let's talk about cost of education in both countries. Now, cost of education is generally cheap in Canada as compared to other countries of the world. Now, most immigrants in Canada are able to get free education for their children up to the age of 16 or 18. You can also send your children to private Canadian schools that offer tuition between $6,000 to $10,000 yearly. In Australia, however, immigrants can choose to send their children to government schools or non-government schools. Government schools are totally free for permanent residents and citizens. However, some schools can charge, donation fees or voluntary contributions between $640 and $730 as the case may be. Now, let's talk about the most important reason why people relocate or immigrate to these countries: scope of getting citizenship. It is well known that most people who immigrate to countries like this, okay, do this because they want to get a second citizenship. I mean, why would you want to go to a country and not certain about your immigration status? In Canada, citizenship is a possibility after you must have lived in Canada for at least 3 years. That is 1,460 days as a permanent resident. However, a citizenship test is required at the time of becoming a citizen. This means that before you can become a citizen, after your 3 years, you need to sit down for a citizenship test. Then upon passing that test, you can now be conferred a citizen of Canada. You also need to file your tax returns for the number of years you've stayed in the country. As for Australia, you can apply to become a citizen after you must have physically lived in the country for a number of years, okay, as a permanent resident or a temporary resident. 3 out of 4 of those years is very, very paramount. Now, before you can become a citizen in Australia, you will have to demonstrate a valid job record for the number of years you have lived physically in Australia to be able to become a citizen. Overall, both countries assures you of citizenship after 3 years. Guys, so with this, I don't know what you're thinking. What is your decision? What is your choice? What do you think is better for you out of these 2 countries? Which country do you think is better for you and your family? Which country do you think you'll be immigrating to? Which country do you think fits into your lifestyle? Which country do you think you'll be able to make it better? I want you to drop your comments in the comment section. I cannot wait to read it. I want to know what you think. So I did a video about some of the challenges that new immigrants go through here in Canada in the first 3 to 4 months when they come in. You might want to watch the video next.